Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra Unit 8.6 Notes. Today we're talking about the quadratic formula. Our learning target today is to be able to solve the quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. So we've talked about 3 methods so far. Now some of you guys only learned 2 of them, and that's factoring, the inverse operations or SADMAP, and then the third one was completing the square. Let's review those because there are different scenarios of when you want to do each one. Now, notice for the first 3 of them, or all of them, the first step is the same. We want to set your equation equal to 0. So let's look at the first one. So if I'm going to set this equal to 0, I want to make sure that my quadratic term is positive. So it's positive right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move everything else to the left side. Minus the 2m, minus the 2m. Everything on the right-hand side cancels, and we're left with the 0, which is what we want. And now on the left side, we have 5m squared minus 8m minus 4. Okay? And now this is where we decide, oh, do I want to do factoring? Do I need to do inverse operations? Can I do completing the square? So when we're factoring, you multiply those two numbers and we get 20. Remember when we write down the factors, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Most of you guys can do this part in your head by now. And you're looking for numbers that multiply to get to a negative 20 and add to get to negative 8. What's the pair? Hopefully you're saying, Mr. Grice, it's 2 and negative 10. And remember, it has to work for both of those. Okay? So this type of factoring is called splitting the middle term. We have 5m squared plus 2m minus 10m minus 4 equal to 0. We split the 2 down the middle and factor. Okay, so factor the left side. I can pull out an m. The GCF comes out front, and we're left with 5m plus 2. The back, my GCF, or my leading coefficient's negative, so my GCF is negative, and I can take out a negative 2. And then when we divide that out, negative 10 divided by negative 2 is positive 5, and negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. And remember, if these don't match up, you did something wrong, okay? So we're left with m minus 2 and 5m plus 2 equals 0. And since it equals 0, guys, we're solving it. I want to know what it means. So we set m minus 2 equal to 0, the 5m plus 2 equal to 0. And then we solved those, where we get m equals 2 and m equals negative 2 over 5. And if you need help watching that, guys, you need to go back and watch the first factoring video on how we did that. I think it was 8.1. Okay, so when we write our answers, okay, we write them as in order. So we have m, numerical order, negative 2 over 5, and positive 2. Okay? All right. B. First thing we want to do is set it equal to 0. Okay? Or we can use it if there's no linear term, or it has parentheses. So before it's like, Mr. Grice, you said to set it equal to 0. It has parentheses, guys. So if it has parentheses, I'm automatically going to use SADMAP. Okay? So first thing that we got to do, I'm going to write SADMAP up here. So I make sure to do everything in order. I need to cancel addition or subtraction first. I see addition, so I'm going to cancel that out. Subtract 3, we're left with 4. X plus 3 squared equals 64. So I took care of that. Next, I'm going to cancel out multiplication because we're multiplying that 4, and I'm going to cancel it with division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And now we have x plus 3 squared equaling 16. So I got rid of a multiplication. The next is to get rid of my exponent, and to get rid of a square, I do the square root. And this is where we need to remember that our calculator only gives us part of the answer. It can be a plus or a minus. And from here, since there are 2 answers, I need to solve this twice, where I have -4, -3, and +4, -3. Mr. Grice, how'd you get -3? Well, to solve for x, I have to subtract that 3 to both sides, okay? So when we do that, we get our 2 answers of x equals -7 and 1. Okay, guys, for the completing the square, I'm not going to do this example because some of you guys learned this and some of you didn't. If you need help with this one, come see Miss Carranza or myself, Mr. Grice, and we'll go through it with you. Okay? Now, the quadratic formula. It might look scary, but it's really not that bad. Okay? So the quadratic formula can be used in any of those equations. So if you don't like factoring, you don't like inverse operations, you definitely don't like completing the square, you can use the quadratic formula every single time and you can get the right answer. Now, the key thing is, well, let's see, I see a B, I see a B, let's see, I see the letter A, I see C. What has to happen is you have to have your equation set equal to 0. So ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, okay? Now, if you do that, every single time you're going to get the right answer. And there's a really cool song. I'm sure you guys love it, okay? Now, on the other side, I'm going to write down the equation and sing the song to you guys so you know what it is, okay? Have you guys ever heard Pop Goes the Weasel? Well, here it goes. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Yeah, that's it. That's the equation. Now, we're not going to make you memorize it, but if you do, you can get extra credit. Now, the key things that we need to know is we need to know that A is 3, B is 5, and C is 1. Okay? We know that right away because it's set equal to 0. All right? So, let's go ahead and solve this. X equals the opposite of, well, the opposite of B. Good. Plus or minus the square root. Now, I'm going to put parentheses in here of b squared minus 4ac, right? So ac all divided by 2a. And there we go. Okay? The b, that's where we plug in the b. A was 3. That's where we plugged in the a. And c was 1. And that's where we plug it in. So that wasn't too bad. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start solving this. And we're not going to plug it into our calculator all at once, okay? We're going to do it in sections, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do, everything underneath the square root, okay? The square root's staying there. Guys, notice that. My square root's still there. I just want to know what's underneath the square root. Okay, so that's 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. That's all I want right there. Okay, and I get 13. So that's the first part. And then I'm also going to solve the bottom. 2 times 3, no calculator. 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, that's the first part. Look at it, it's already a lot smaller. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out what that square root is. Okay, so I want to know what is the square root of 13. And we need to round that. Okay, and that's plus or minus 3.61. Okay, remember 5 or more raise the score, 4 or less, let it rest. Okay, and now we have two equations. Okay, we have negative 5 minus 3.61 divided by 6 and negative 5 plus 3.61 divided by 6. Okay, remember that there's the plus, so there's my plus equation, and the minus, there's my minus equation. Now, depending on what calculator you have, you can either type that in. I think if you have a Casio you can type that in. But if you have a TI calculator, you should type it in like that. Use the parentheses, negative 5 minus 3.61 divided by 6 and negative 5 plus 3.61 divided by 6. And then we get our two answers of negative 1.44 and negative 0.23. Okay? So I'm just going to rewrite my answers in one section over here, negative 1.44 and negative 0.23. There we go. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Now, solve the quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. Yes, some of these you can use other methods, but we want you to practice using the quadratic formula. Okay, so I want my quadratic term to be positive, which it is. So now I'm going to move everything to the other side. So plus 2x plus 12 plus 12. This has to be set equal to 0. And we get x squared plus 9x plus 16. Okay? So we need to write down that a equals 1, b equals 9, and c equals 16. Okay, so x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root. I'm going to put all of these in parentheses. B squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. All right, do you guys see where all that information came from? All right, now in my next line, remember, all I'm doing is what's underneath the parentheses, or underneath the square root, I'm sorry, and what's underneath. Okay, 2 times 1, guys, come on, we can do that. All right, so underneath the square root, we have 9 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. Okay, and I got 17. Okay, in our next line, negative 9 plus or minus, I know the bottom's 2. I need to find out what the square root of 17 is. And remember, we're rounding it to 4.12. Okay? And then we split it up into the two problems where x equals -9 minus 4.12 divided by 2, and x equals -9 plus 4.12 divided by 2. Okay? And remember, this part right here, you can type that directly in only if you have a Casio. If you have a TI, you'd be typing in parentheses -9 minus 4.12 divided by 2 and -9 plus 4.12 divided by 2. This is the last time I'm going to break that down for you guys, okay? When you're done, you should get your answer that x equals -6.56 and -2.44. Those are your two answers, okay? All right, number 2. Number 2, why don't you guys see if you can set it equal to 0 and then tell me what A, B, and C are. Pause the video and good luck. Okay, you should have gotten that A equals 3, B equals 1. Oh, that's a -1. Sorry. And C equals -5. Okay, so quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of B. Well, it's a -1 right now, so the opposite of a -1 is a +1. So opposite of B. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Cool. All right, next part. We're going to do what's underneath the square root and the denominator. All right. Should have gotten 6 for the denominator. And what'd you guys get for the gray? Underneath the square root, you should have gotten 61. Okay? And now the square root of 61 is what? Did you get 7.81? That's what I got. Okay. And now you need to break it up into your two problems. Okay. We have x equals 1 minus 7.81 divided by 6, and x equals 1 plus 7.81 divided by 6. So you guys know how you have to type that into your calculator. Go ahead and do that right now. Okay, and you should be getting that x equals -1.14 and 1.47. Okay, remember you have to round your answers, guys. Okay, number 3. My quadratic term's already positive, so I'm going to add the x to the other side, and I'm going to add the 2 to the other side. And we get that 0 equals 5x squared plus x plus 2. Okay, so I know that a equals 5, b equals 1, and c equals 2. All right, why don't you guys pause the video and see if you can get all of the numbers for the quadratic formula in the correct place. Okay, good luck. Okay, there you go. Now, did you guys catch Mr. Grice's mistake? Because I just did. 8 plus 2, guys. 8 plus 2 is 10. C should have been 10. My fault. Fix it now. And you should have yelled at me, guys. Come on, I couldn't hear you. Okay, so let's go ahead and start solving. Did you get everything in the right spot? So we have the opposite of B. 2's on the bottom because that's 2 times 1. What do you guys get for underneath the square root? All right, because we have 1 squared minus 4 times 5 times 10, which gives us negative 199. Okay, and so we have to take the square root of negative 199, and we get, ooh, can I take a square root of a negative number? Nope. So when that happens, that is no real solution. When you get on to Advanced Algebra 2, your junior year, you'll learn a little bit more about that. Okay? All right, number 4. Look at your quadratic terms. Which one do we need to move? Hopefully you're saying the x squared. Okay, and then when we do that, we get 9x squared minus 12x plus 4 equal to 0. Okay? Now, guess what? This can actually be factored. Okay? But what we want to do is we want to practice using the quadratic formula. So a equals 9, b equals 12, and c equals 4. Okay? So let's go ahead. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Cool. 2 times 9 on the bottom, I can do that right away. That's 18. And now, did I make another mistake? I sure did. This is what happens, guys, when you go too fast. That's supposed to be a negative 12, so the opposite is a positive 12. Whoops. I can't believe this. I'd actually make a new video, but it takes way too long. Okay, so that's a negative 12 underneath there. Okay, so when we do what's underneath the square root, we have negative 12 squared minus 4 times 9 times 4, and we get 0. The square root of 0 is 0, so when we go to the next step, it's just 12 over 18. And there's only going to be one answer because there's no plus or minus, because plus or minus 0, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. Okay? Now, you can do one of two things. You can reduce your fraction, and you get that x equals 2 over 3, or you can get the decimal, and it would be 0.67. Okay? Those are both saying the same thing. Okay? Okay, last one, number 5. There's only one quadratic term, so let's see, we have to subtract 5x minus 18. There's no spot for it, so I'm just going to put it right there. We get everything equal to 0 like we wanted to, and we get 3x squared. Well, the x's cancel out, and we get minus 18. Now, once again, we can solve this, okay? There's no linear term here, so we could use inverses. But we're not going to do that. My A is 3. My B, ooh, there's no B term, so that means B is 0, and C is negative 18. Okay? So, doing the quadratic formula, we get x equals, well, the opposite of B is 0. So, it's there's nothing there, okay? So, we have plus or minus the square root of 0 squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2A. So when we get that, we get plus or minus underneath the square root. We have 0 squared minus 4 times, oh, sorry, I got to put this all in parentheses, times 3 times negative, negative 18, and then we get positive 216. Okay, so the square root of 216 is 14.7. And when you split this up, you have negative 14.7 divided by 6 and positive 14.7 divided by 6. And 14.7 divided by 6 gives us 2.5. Okay, so this one was x equals plus or minus 2.5. Okay. All right, guys, well, that's it for Algebra Unit 8.6 Notes, the quadratic formula. If you need assistance on this, guys, I know this was a long video, but if you need help, come find Ms. Carranza or myself. We would love to help you out. Otherwise, this is Mr. Grice signing off. Thanks for watching.